It is time for another review on podcasts. I did one about music a while ago and then never did another one. And I'm trying to split podcasts into like groups and sections of genre before I want to talk about like, oh, these are some really good ones that I enjoy and I'd like to know some that you enjoy and here's what I found like useful if you're looking for these kind of podcasts. So I did one on music. You can go look that up. At the time, I don't think I had found the podcast Broken Record yet, so I'll add in really quick here. Broken Record is a great music podcast. Malcolm Gladwell and Rick Rubin, they interview folks, and it's really, really good. Good interview-based podcast for people who are interested in various types of music. Now, I want to specify, because this is going to be about art podcasts. Music is art. Books are art, movies are art. This is going to be more based on visual arts, but I am going to talk at the very end about two book-related podcasts because I don't really have like a section of like, oh, these are all like about reading and whatever. I've already got that other one about music because there's a bunch that I listened to that were music-related. I don't really have any about movies that I, personally get into. And I'll have another one or two different like reviews on podcasts that I really like. I just don't know how I'm going to group them yet because they're a little more like all over the place. Like true crime is an obvious one. I can talk about some of those, but some other ones not so obvious. So with that, I'm going to get into it. First, I'm going to talk about podcasts that I have listened to that are art related that have been like retired and they're not making new episodes anymore that I'm aware of. And I'm going to start with one called Creative Processing. It might come back, it might not, I'm not sure. Joseph Gordon-Levitt hosted it. They had 14 episodes, and they haven't put anything out for like a year. So it was like a 3-month period or something that it was like boom, 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 just like they put these episodes out, and they're really great. Again, it's an interview-based podcast, but he, got a lot of questions from people, and then decided on like who's an artist that could answer this question effectively. And then so some of them were visual artists or musicians or like filmmakers or whatever. Some people he knew beforehand, some people I don't think he did. But it was really good. It was nice. And again, we're talking about creative processing. It was just a really nice interview-based podcast with questions that started surrounding around process and an artist's process and how they do things and how they think about things. So that's one that I really enjoyed for those reasons. It had more of a specific direction. It wasn't just about, I'm interviewing an artist and let's just talk about you and everything about you and whatever. Like, it kind of really wanted to get into the process very specifically and directly. And it was light and fun and also had some serious stuff too, and just, it was good. That one might come back, but I don't know. Like I said, it's been a year. Joseph Gordon-Levitt does a lot of stuff. I'm hoping that he would come back and do more, but I'm not sure. Disturbing the Peace. Peace as in like piece of art. Piece. This one, there's 49 episodes, and they haven't uploaded for about a year, and I doubt they ever will again. They ended very abruptly. I can't remember the name of the host now. This one wasn't as high quality, and part of me was like, I should have stopped listening a while ago, but I was getting a little bit out of it here and there, but not a lot. So she interviewed artists occasionally. She sometimes did whole episodes about a gallery exhibition that she had like gone and seen. Sometimes it was about a specific movement, like an art movement. Sometimes she had like little fun episodes that were like Harry Potter based with just like, there was like a Harry Potter one towards the end that was about the real art history involved in the Harry Potter books and movies and like how they drew things like from historical references that were in there. So sometimes there's some offbeat stuff like that. It was kind of a solo thing, but I think the majority of episodes she actually has like special guests on. Some of them reoccur 3-4 times throughout those 49 episodes. But it definitely wasn't done incredibly well, and a lot of those things that I would have wanted fixed never got fixed. From episode 1 to episode 49, they were just kind of like, there's some audio issues, there were some just like weird, awkward inconsistencies with like pauses and editing stuff that could have been done better. She didn't say anything about stopping the podcast. That's why I believe like it just, I don't know, for some reason it just ended. I don't know why, so I doubt it'll be back. There was some good stuff in there, and if that sounds like, she was kind of like light and fun, but really awkward, and I wouldn't say in like a charming way, but I mean that's obviously subject to interpretation. But those are some of the things they talked about in Disturbing the Peace. Again, there's 49 episodes there. You can check some of it out if it sounds interesting to you. It was definitely not my most enjoyed art podcast, but there it is. And I really want to go through these quickly because, like, it's awkward, but also retired art podcasts. So I started one called Artist Life with a friend, an old friend that is no longer friends. I don't know how long ago now, a couple years ago. And we did, I don't know how many episodes we did together, about 30-ish, and then I did some on my own after that. That was called Artist Life, and we never interviewed anybody. We just talked about subjects together, bounced ideas off each other. It was a lot of fun in the moment. We got deep into some stuff. It was good. I really enjoyed doing it. It was fun. Then I tried to continue that on my own, and I mean, it was about a year ago that I stopped, and I decided I wanted to do interviews because I was like, man, I just can't carry this podcast on my own the way that I was with someone else. Like, discussing a topic, it just wasn't working out very well. And I recognized that. So I had one interview, and then I stopped. So there's 38 episodes in total of that. I think there's some cool stuff in there. The ones I do by myself are definitely more awkward and like not super great. But there's some cool, interesting subjects that get attacked in there. And then Art Ballad is the podcast I was doing with Randy. We did 65 episodes. So it was kind of like a weekly thing with like a main topic. And then after a while, we started to do 2 episodes in a week, and one of them was called a bite size, and it was aimed to be like, you know, between 20 minutes and a half hour, whereas a main episode might be like an hour or hour or 15 minutes or something like that. But we rotated between like themes, like having a theme about an art movement or a specific genre of art, to maybe talking about a specific artist because we watched a biopic and did some research. We did some interviews as well with people, which was awesome and fun and great. And then we just kind of did some like shoot the shit ones where we were just like talking about like art stuff that was on our mind the past couple weeks and like our own personal artistic practice and like things that we were going through and that we were learning. We did some like fun, it was a lot of fun. We did a lot of fun episodes where we just like had questions for each other, like a this or that type thing. I had a lot of fun doing that, a lot of fun. And again, that one also just kind of like stopped abruptly. With Artist Life, I was like, hey, this is going to stop now, and I'm going to do this other podcast called Art Ballad. And I had like an episode explaining that. And with Art Ballad, the way that it ended, things were kind of really up in the air, and I didn't know what was going on. And then it just kind of like stopped, and I've never given an explanation, which I honestly don't like. I don't like when podcasts do that. There's just like no explanation, and it's over, and you're like, what? Are you going to do more? But anyway, I that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, and we got a lot of great feedback too, that people enjoyed it and thought it was a lot of fun. And those are some of the things you can expect on there. Again, there's 65 episodes. We do talk about some specific stuff, some cool stuff, some specific art movements, specific artists, some art-related movies we watched. Just had fun with other people and interviewing them and their process. So that's there and hasn't had anything updated for about 3 months now. Now, I want to move into podcasts that I really want to talk about, art podcasts that are ongoing, that are still going. So, one of my favorites, and that I've been listening to the longest more than any of these, 99% Invisible. It's debatable whether I want to call it an art podcast, because I did mention this is more about visual art, but it is design-based for sure. And they have 493 episodes over the past 10 years, and I've listened to all of them. Now, something that I've discussed before, when it comes to podcasts, it's like really bittersweet finding like a new podcast because I have way too many that I listen to, and I go from like the very last episode I can find and listen to them in chronological order up to date. So luckily I found this podcast like about 6 years ago, so they'd only been doing it for like 4 years at that point. And I was able to catch up, especially because at that time I wasn't listening to a lot of podcasts back then like I am now, which I'm subscribed to like 40 something different podcasts. But yeah, 99% Invisible is amazing. They actually have a book out, and I have it right next to me, but I don't want to grab it. I think it's called The Invisible World. I don't remember what it's called. Anyway, but it talks about design in our world, and it's called 99% Invisible because a lot of these things we wouldn't be thinking of. It's, I still remember the very first episode. It really stuck with me, and it was so new and fresh to me. They were talking about sound, and it was only like a 5-minute episode. So that's the other thing. I should talk about how long a lot of these episodes are. Creative Processing, Disturbing the Peace, those are like an hour-ish long. Artist Life was about that. Art Ballad, I already talked about, like the main ones were like that long. The bite size were like half that. 99% Invisible, I think they average now about a half an hour-ish. Some are like 20 minutes, some are like 40. They definitely don't really exceed 40 minutes very often, ever. But the old ones, really old ones, because you can still go back and download them, I'm pretty sure. Some of them are just like 5 minutes. There's a lot that are like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 5, 10, like whatever. And it took years before they got into like doing these longer ones that are like 20 minutes, half hour, sometimes 40, but rarely. But I just remember this one on sound, and it was just like, man, I never really thought about what went into making a simple like sound on your phone. Like, whether it be a ringtone or just like a swiping motion sometimes has a sound, or like you click on something, or like whether it's an alarm or like a calendar reminder. Like, and there was this dude who was like a sound designer, and he was talking about like some of these things that he uses to make sounds and for apps, and then you have to have like meetings with people and see like what sound they like best. It was just really freaking cool. And so they talk about, sometimes it's like visual art, sculpture stuff, architecture, sound design, like stuff in cities that you wouldn't necessarily think about, like, oh, that was designed. And they talk about like how that affects humans, and like humans are creating a lot of these things, and they have to think about all these other things and how they're going to affect other people. I mean, that's a huge part of architecture too, is like people have to interact with the space somehow. So it's not just about it being safe, structurally sound, but also aesthetically pleasing, but also functional in like a bunch of different ways, and how that affect the moods sometimes of people in that space. There's just a lot of cool stuff. 99% Invisible is one of my favorite podcasts of any genre. And it's just super cool. Even if you're not like into art, I think you'd be able to find it really interesting. So that's like one of my number one recommendations. And there's like I said, 493 episodes. They've been doing it for like 10 years. There's a book as well, and it's really great. So, next one, Mike Giant. He is an old school graffiti artist. He's a tattooist now as well. I mean, he's just an artist, period. But I mean, he started really with graffiti, doing some tattooing along the way, and that's kind of like his main thing now, I would say. But he definitely has some other artwork there. And he started doing a podcast, 2 years ago. He's got 37 episodes, but maybe minus 5. So this is an interview-based one. They're, again, about an hour long. So it's just Mike Giant. That was like or Giant was one of his like tags, one of his I don't know what to call it for lay people, monikers, like aliases, but huge legend in the graffiti world. He's a real character, very, very California, laid back. He loves to laugh, just really chill, but he's a really good time with his guests. A lot of them he knows from graffiti and or tattooing, or a lot of the people that he interviews have like graffiti roots. Some of them that he influenced their work, and he just knows them through that or whatever. So, but they have fun on there, and it's just a cool, again, it's an interview-based one, and it's, like I said, he's a character. Audio quality there. First, let me go back one step. 99% Invisible. Quality of the podcast is impeccable. Amazing. Perfect. High production value, if you care about that kind of thing, which I do sometimes. Anyway, Mike Giants definitely has some audio issues from time to time, just with levels and editing and stuff. I would say that majority of the time he's high, and sometimes his guests are too. But they have a lot of fun, and you get to learn about some artists, and it's cool. So he's got 37 episodes. I said maybe -5. Sometime last year, after like COVID stuff started happening, he like released these episodes that were like mixes. Like he just did like a vinyl mix or something. It was like, oh, this is a jungle mix, and it's just music. And then he returned to doing interviews. But yeah, he just had these weird like music mixes on there. But that's a really fun one, especially if you're into graffiti stuff and tattooing or both. He talks about to some other artists who are a little bit outside of that realm, but a lot of them are from that world. A super cool one that I've been enjoying that is newer that I don't know if it's ongoing or if it's on hiatus or if it's retired. It's kind of in the middle. It's Paint Stories with Mark Golden, as in golden paints, like golden artist paints, like golden acrylics, right? That was one of those things that I never realized, like, oh, that's someone's last name. Like, I just thought Golden because it was like, man, it's like gold, like it's the best paint, you know? But yeah, Paint Stories by Mark Golden. There's only 12 episodes out. He started it 7 months ago, but it's been inactive for like 3 or 4 months. And I remember him saying like, oh, I'm just going to take a break and come back to it. And he hasn't yet. So I don't know if he will, but he started off just telling these stories about like how did the company originate. He talked about his like mom and dad and like I think it was his uncle and like they used to be called this other thing and then they like changed the name and then they did this and like these people in like the 70s and stuff and these artists that were like this big group that were hanging around. Like it's really cool for some like micro history of the art scene in that time and place. And then he does get into some interviews, but they're more of just like allowing these people to tell stories rather than just like, where were you born? Blah, 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 blah. Tell us about this. Tell us about your work now. Like, it doesn't feel like a real artist interview to me, like in a stereotypical way, even though I enjoy those as well. But he's talking to these people. A lot of them are definitely older artists. But it's cool. It's just a cool window into like seeing some of that or to hearing some of that history. And yeah, so he's had a couple interviews as well, and I'm assuming he's going to do more of that because the first however many episodes, I think he did one with his brother, but they were just telling these stories of like how the company got started. And I thought that was really cool. I use Golden Acrylics. I love Golden Acrylics. I stand by Golden Acrylics. I'm sure there's other great companies, but I love it. I love the company. So that was really cool. I don't know, like he had like a thing being like, hey, I'm going to come and do some more. Hasn't yet. But there are 12 episodes there. Paint Stories, Mark Golden. It's pretty cool. Radio Juxtapose. So there is an art magazine called Juxtapose. It's not spelt like juxtapose, so I always say juxtapose, but it's Juxtapose. So should be juxtapose, but anyway. Radio Juxtapose, 73 episodes. They've been going for 2 years. I can't remember the name. Evan something or other, and maybe Sean. I can't remember the name of the two hosts. Sorry, to go back to Paint Stories, quality is pretty good with that. Radio Juxtapose, sound quality and stuff like definitely differs depending on the episode, just because they're interviewing people from sometimes they're like doing it through Skype or whatever, and sometimes just there's issues there, but it's pretty good all around. I really like this one. It is interview based, but it's usually only like half of the episode or like maybe 2/3 of the episode. They're usually talking about current events in art for the first little bit. Sometimes they close on it as well, and they're just talking about what's going on. Sometimes they talk about like stuff that's in the upcoming issue or so of the magazine, but definitely like plugged into contemporary art, underground stuff as well, not just like the stuff you would find in like Art Forum or like some really like capital A art high market stuff. The magazine was founded by, I forget his name and I feel stupid now. Robert? Can't remember his name. But he started out doing he has a lot of surreal work, and he was in like these like comics, these underground comics at the time, old school stuff. And so like they do a lot of like street art, graffiti, like yarn bombing. Like they do a lot of like off-ball stuff, and then a lot of just stuff that you would find at Art Basel as well, and some of these art festivals. So it's a really good mix. I really enjoy it because they it's a very high quality magazine that I've been reading for years and years and years, and it covers a lot of good ground. That it's a lot of interviews, some informative stuff. It's great. The podcast again, Radio Juxtapose. Mostly interview based, but again, really plugged into the contemporary art world, what is happening right now, and it's good. I enjoy it. It's fun. It's kind of loose too. It's definitely not like super like Iron Fist serious or anything, but they ask good questions because they are artists and editors of the magazine, and they're very plugged into what's going on. So that's another one. Last visual one that I'm going to talk about is called State of the Art. 152 episodes, started about 3 years ago. And this one is really cool. I don't remember, man, I should have put the names of the hosts. I can't remember his name. But he talks about the intersection of art and technology. So a lot of the times, especially at first, he's interviewing people that have like certain websites or apps or whatever, things that people have created, these things that join technology and art together. Sometimes he interviews artists and talks about like, hey, how did technology help you get where you are? Or like, yeah, he focuses on this very specific part of the art world, like state of the art, and it's just like talking about technology and how it affects art and how art affects technology and again, the intersection of those things. So it's kind of cool. It's definitely not my like super favorite to listen to, but that's just me. Again, production value is pretty good, but it also depends on the person he's interviewing and if they're in the room or if it's through a call and how well their audio is and if there's mixing and editing involved. Anyway, but it's definitely this niche thing over here with technology. So if you're into that stuff, then that would be cool. Again, it's just not my favorite thing because I really like the interview-based ones. I like hearing the stories. I like hearing about process and stuff, and this is very specific, and I do get something out of it, but again, it's not my favorite thing. So those are the art-related podcasts that I listen to. I would really love to hear suggestions of art podcasts you listen to. Sell me on it, please. Don't just give me a name for me to look up. Like, try and sell me on it because I have so many podcasts that I listen to that, like, I don't go and just try random ones, or even I don't even bother searching up new ones a lot of the time. Every once in a while, I'll be like, oh, I wonder if High Fructose has one yet because they're, again, like another really great art magazine, or like, I wonder if this company or this whatever. Yeah. Anyway, so I often think about that when I'm looking up new stuff, but I don't look up new stuff very often because I've got so much on my plate already. So, with that, I do want you to suggest stuff to me, sell me on it, tell me why you love it, why it's good, and then based on that, I will most likely check it out and be like, hey, like that sounds like it would actually be interesting. Or maybe it's something I've already looked at and just was like, that wasn't for me. But those are some of mine. Again, so if I want to run down the list, Creative Processing only has 14 episodes. Not run down the whole list of all of them, but the ones that I really want to suggest. Creative Processing, only 14 episodes. I don't think they're going to do any more, but I'm not really sure. Joseph Gordon-Levitt hosts it. It's fun, it's light, good production, and they get into the actual artist's process and how they do things and how they create their work and what things they're thinking about. It's really good. 99% Invisible, highly, highly, highly recommend. I think it's super interesting, amazing production value, really good stuff, telling the stories of how these things are thought of and designed and why they're done that way. Really interesting stuff. And then, I guess I would say that my third favorite one on here would be Radio Juxtapose. Again, just interviewing artists, very contemporary art, very present and in the now. and I really enjoy it. Again, all three of those are like fun. 99% Invisible is definitely more serious. They definitely have fun. Like it's still fun, but it's very like structured and just like it's kind of like an NPR style in a way without the interviews. I mean, they have little snippets of like interviews talking to people, but I'm going to complicate things. I want to get into 2 book podcasts really quick. So one of them is Penguin Publishing, Penguin Podcasts. I'm sure that you've seen the books before, orange, white, and black, the penguin, the logo. It's really, really good. I really enjoy it. There is 150 episodes, and it's been going on for 5 years. It had the same host for like a while, and then I don't know what happened, but I'm really behind on it, by the way. All these podcasts I'm giving you, some of them I'm completely caught up. Some of them I'm like really far behind. Some of them are over, and I've finished them, right? So, yeah, this is one that I only discovered it like I think less than a year ago. So there's a lot of stuff to catch up on there. I was going to say, as for length and stuff, all the ones I mentioned beforehand, pretty much most of them are like an hour long. And the Penguin podcasts are around there too. I'm going to sneeze and it's not coming. Whew. All right, let's just make that go away. So, they had a host for a while that was consistent, and then they switch it up. It seems like they have like a rotating cast of different hosts, and they do like a couple in a row and then switch to someone else. I don't know what the thinking was behind that. They didn't explain it. It just went from like the same host every time and just like out of nowhere, not. But production value is really good, and they're interviewing authors. Some of them aren't like known for like being an author. Like they had I forget his name, Elvis Costello, because he did write a book that was kind of a memoir, but not, I guess. And but he's known for being a musician, not for being an author. But he did write a book, so they talked to him. And I really enjoy the podcast. It's built on, it was anyway. And again, I'm so far behind. I'm like years behind on it because I'm starting at the beginning. I don't know if they've gotten rid of some of these structures that they had, because it was kind of built upon the person coming in with 5 objects. They would bring 5 objects that they would talk about. A lot of the times they were talking also about a book that just got published recently, and they was like kind of promoting that book, but they also talk about their past works, what influences them, their process, and these 5 objects sometimes like related either to the book that they're trying to sell in a way that sounds cruddy. It's not really, it doesn't feel forced and commercial like that. But it would focus on that as like, oh, this object was an inspiration for this thing, or sometimes like this object is something I use on my writing desk, and this is why, or whatever. So it was kind of like this show and tell thing, but they would like base it off of these objects a lot of the time, and then the host would have separate questions. A lot of the time too, these books are available in audio format, so they have excerpts from the audio book every once in a while, and then the host brings it up for a reason, and they talk about that excerpt a little bit. But I really enjoy that. As far as like, I don't have any other podcast where they interview authors, like strictly just interview authors. So I really enjoy it. If you know any other book podcasts, you should let me know, because I'm interested in that. The other one is something I fought for a long time. This is the last one I'm going to talk about. It is called Reading Glasses. There are 203 episodes, and they've been doing it for 3 years. There's 2 hosts, and I forget their name, Bria and... oh, I don't remember. I need to write these things down, folks. I'm sorry. I'm still getting back into, like, what do I need to do in order to, like, do a good review, and I just don't think about stuff, and I'm way too off the cuff sometimes. So, Mallory and Bria, I think. But there's these 2 hosts. They really, really love books. They are, they use the term bookish a lot. They are kind of adjacent and in the film industry world as well. But they just have these episodes, like this podcast, about books and about reading. And my friend pushed it on me for a while, and I was like, I love reading. I don't want to listen to people talk about reading. And then I eventually gave it a shot, and I was like, you know what? This is actually really fun. I really enjoy it. They sometimes have someone they interview. It's definitely not even half the length of the podcast usually. And these episodes, I'm pretty sure that they're like around a half hour each. They might be a little more. Good quality, really good audio quality for sure. Same thing with Penguin Podcast. But they have like a theme. They have like a theme, but they also start off with like, what are you reading? And every week they're reading something different because they go through like so many books. They read a lot. So they talk about what they're reading, and like they're really fun. They're really fun, and they tackle certain subjects sometimes, like about they discuss like certain marginalized groups or whatever. Like, I'm trying to remember the one. I'm really behind on this one as well. Really behind, because I only started listening to this one like maybe 6 months ago as well, around the time of Penguin Podcast that I started. Trying to think. Like, they had an author in there that wanted to talk about how people with special needs are really not done justice by. Does that sentence make sense? They're underrepresented. They're not represented well. It's like being comic relief. There's hardly any authors that are really promoted that are in that special needs community. And what happens sometimes when authors are trying to have a character that has certain needs and they don't do enough research, whatever. So they certain subjects like that, or just anything to do with books and reading, like anything you can think of. They talk about that kind of stuff, and then they have a way for people to connect. They always have like a different hashtag every week. Like, oh, if you want to connect with other like bookish people that read or whatever, here's like the hashtag for the week, and they talk about that a bit. But it's really a lot of fun. They do, like I said, interviews that are a small part of it. They have like a theme where the interview and theme go hand in hand, but usually they talk about the theme, just the two of them, for a while before they have the guest on that is going to give some more knowledge from a more expert stance, or to talk about it with them. I think I've not done a good job telling you about it and pushing that one on you because I'm being so vague. One of the things I really like about it, though, and something I'm doing right now, is called the Reading Glasses Challenge. So they have different things every year. There are 5 books and 5 tasks that you need to do. And so I just thought it was a cool way to push myself to read some different stuff and do some different stuff. Some examples are, so like for this year, they challenge you to read a book that's been banned. I think that's a cool idea, and you can kind of play with that. You can be like, well, is it banned in my school, banned in my city, banned in the country? Is it still banned, or it was banned? So for example, there's a list that are like, these are books that have been banned in Canada. They're not banned anymore, but they were. Lolita's on there, for one. Mein Kampf was on there. A book called Peyton Place. But I think there's like a wiki article about that. So they get flexible with it. Like, it's not just like, you can decide. They want you to read a book that's been suggested by a library, local library, or whatever. And so you can ask a librarian for a suggestion, because some libraries, you can even do that virtually, and they'll like suggest a book to you, which I think is really cool. Or you can just go on a site, like the Lethbridge Library just has basically like staff picks, staff suggestions, and there's like 20 to 30 books there. So I picked from there. Reading an Aboriginal author. Some of the tasks are like attending a virtual book event. I think that's really cool, and especially because they made the challenge because of COVID stuff, I think it relates. Getting rid of a book, that's one of the challenges, or like the tasks. Promoting a local bookstore, or boosting them, or whatever. Reviewing a book by an author that is a person of color. So those are some of the stuff. Anyway, I think it's really cool, and I'm doing the challenge, so if you are, you should let me know. But yeah, I think that literature is definitely art, but I just didn't have enough book-based podcasts to make a separate episode, and I've got so many. I've already done the music one. Those are the art podcasts that I listen to, other than, like I said, the music ones that I've already talked about in a different episode. I want to know, what art ones do you like? If you have comments on any of the ones that I have suggested to you or that I listen to. But definitely, if you have suggestions for me, please let me know and sell me on it. Give me a reason why I should check these out, so I'm not just going in blind. And I can't think of anything else to say right now. I'll wrap it up by saying, I really miss doing an art-related podcast. I learned a lot by doing it, other than the fact that it was just really fun to do with somebody else. Because doing it on my own, it just wasn't... Wasn't great. I just didn't enjoy it that much. But I really enjoyed doing it. I learned I just learned a lot of cool stuff, and it was a lot of fun. And whatever. I have toyed with the idea of trying to reintegrate that somehow into my life, doing an art podcast, but I don't know how I'm going to do it. If I'm going to do it yet at all, I really don't know. I might just talk about it every once in a while in a conversation or something. I don't know. I don't know yet. So there we go. Anyway, with that, we'll see you on another time.